Rockstar Games and the Independent Workers' Union of Great Britain, often referred to as the IWGB, have found themselves at the center of one of the most closely watched labor disputes in the modern games industry, and the timeline of events so far paints a picture of escalating tension between a major AAA studio and an increasingly organized workforce. The situation began gaining widespread attention in late 2025 when reports emerged that a number of employees across Rockstar's UK and international studios had been dismissed. Rockstar's position, communicated through official statements, was that these terminations were related to alleged breaches of confidentiality, specifically the sharing of internal or sensitive company information in spaces that were not authorized for discussion. However, almost immediately after these reports surfaced, the IWGB raised serious concerns about the context and scale of the dismissals, arguing that the situation was not simply about confidentiality violations, but potentially connected to ongoing union activity and organizing efforts within the company. As the story developed through late 2025, the dispute began to shift from internal company matters into a broader public and legal confrontation. The IWGB and supporting workers pushed the narrative that the firings were disproportionately targeting individuals involved in union discussions or organizing efforts, raising the possibility of what they described as retaliatory action against collective worker activity. Rockstar, meanwhile, continued to maintain that its actions were based strictly on internal policy enforcement and the protection of intellectual property, emphasizing the importance of confidentiality in a studio working on some of the most high profile and closely guarded projects in the entertainment industry. This fundamental disagreement over intent versus policy enforcement became the core of the dispute, with both sides firmly entrenched in their positions. By November of 2025, the situation escalated further when legal action was initiated through employment tribunal channels in the United Kingdom. The IWGB supported affected workers in bringing claims that challenged the legality and fairness of the dismissals, framing them within the context of protected union activity. Rockstar's defense continued to focus on the assertion that the terminations were justified disciplinary actions unrelated to union membership or organizing. At this stage, the dispute transitioned from public debate into formal legal proceedings, where evidence, documentation, and testimony would ultimately be examined under employment law standards rather than public opinion or media framing. While some early requests for immediate remedies, such as reinstatement pending full hearings, were considered, the threshold for such measures was not met, meaning the broader legal process was required to continue before any final determination could be made. As 2025 progressed into early 2026, the dispute also began to take on a more visible public dimension beyond legal filings. The IWGB and supporting workers increased their public messaging, highlighting concerns about workplace conditions, union recognition, and the right to organize within major game development studios. At the same time, Rockstar and its parent company Take-Two Interactive continued to emphasize their commitment to internal policies and the protection of confidential development material, particularly in an industry where leaks can have significant financial and operational impact. The result was a growing divide in public perception, with some viewing the situation primarily through the lens of labor rights and unionization, while others focused on corporate security and enforcement of internal rules. During this period, attention within the wider gaming community also intensified because Rockstar is not just any studio. It is one of the most influential developers in the industry, known for massive releases that often define console generations. This context added weight to every development in the dispute, as any labor-related issue at Rockstar naturally attracted scrutiny from both fans and industry observers. Discussions online increasingly focused on broader themes such as crunch culture, workplace transparency, unionization in game development, and how large studios balance secrecy with employee rights. The IWGB's involvement also placed the dispute within a larger pattern of labor organizing efforts across the UK tech and creative sectors, where unions have been increasingly active in advocating for workers in industries traditionally resistant to formal union structures. As the legal proceedings continued into 2026, the case remained ongoing rather than resolved, with both sides maintaining their positions and the tribunal process continuing to examine the claims in detail. While no final legal conclusion had been reached at the time of this timeline, the dispute itself had already had a noticeable impact on discourse within the industry. Reports and commentary suggested that union membership and organizing efforts within game development studios were receiving increased attention, and that companies across the sector were watching the outcome closely due to its potential implications for workplace policy and labor relations. What makes this situation particularly significant is that it does not exist in isolation. It sits at the intersection of several long-running industry conversations about working conditions, creative labor, job security, and the balance of power between employees and large publishers. Regardless of the eventual legal outcome, the dispute between Rockstar Games and the IWGB has already become a reference point in discussions about how modern game development studios manage internal communications, employee organization, and disciplinary action in high security production environments. And as this story continues to develop, it remains one of the key industry narratives to follow, not only because of the companies involved, but because of what it could mean for future labor relations across the entire gaming sector. If you've enjoyed this deep dive and breakdown of the timeline so far, make sure to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any future updates or breakdowns like this one. Also, if you want to support the channel further, you can check out my Patreon, where my latest exclusive video is How Long Can Video Game Franchises Keep Expanding? Available now for supporters. And with that said, thank you for watching. Game on.